You can read 100 books and watch 100 movies about New York or London or LA, but until you actually go to the place, walk the streets, meet the people, and eat the food, you really only know half the story. So all around the world, we're getting back into the travel game again, and visitors to the US are growing. According to forecasts by the National Tourism and Travel Office, by 2025, visitors to the US are going to exceed pre-pandemic levels. How do global retail destinations in the US get ready for this growth in international visitors? So this week I am hosting a LinkedIn Live show. It's called Making Retail a Global Destination. We're going to be joined by retail experts from San Francisco, Hawaii, and New York. So join us for this LinkedIn Live event. I'm going to put a link to register in this post. You can watch the replay later or join us live to ask questions of our guests. So remember, folks, travel is about the journey. It's not the destination. So just get out there and see some stuff. People are traveling again. Domestic tourism in the US has recovered, and international tourism is well on its way to recovery. So how do shopping places and big tourist destinations think about their retail mix? And here's the big question. Is everything back to 2019, or is there a new normal that's still taking shape? All right, we're going to find all of that out today. We've got a bunch of awesome guests. We've got Sina von Reitzenstein with San Francisco's iconic Pier 39. If you've been to San Francisco, you've been to Pier 39. We've got Eric Ogata with Kamehameha Schools. They are the largest landowner in the state of Hawaii. And we've got Patrick Smith with JLL, whose team is marketing the iconic, I'm going to use iconic a lot today, the iconic Seaport, which you've probably been to too, in downtown Manhattan. And then we're talking with Emily Albright Miller with JLL Design Solutions. She's going to tell us how store design formats can evolve to meet the demands of the modern shopper. And all of that is right now on Everything We Know About Retail. This is the show where we tell you everything we know about retail and real estate. We broadcast live on LinkedIn and YouTube, but if you want to check out any of our replays, head on over to everythingweknow.show. That's where all of our videos and past shows are all archived on YouTube. So check that out. So my name is James Cook. I'm coming to you. I'm mentally on vacation right now, but physically I'm in Hawaii. Mentally I'm in Hawaii. Physically I am live in Indiana, and I research retail and real estate for JLL. If you're watching live, we've got Keisha in the chat room ready to answer your questions or talk about retail and retail real estate. And we're going to do a live Q&A at the end of the show. So ask any questions that you want, and we will get to as many of them as we can. So let's get into it, folks. Our first guest today is, here she comes, Sina von Reitzenstein with Pier 39. Welcome, Sina.
Thank you, James. Thank you.
Well, we're excited to have you. And for the few, the proud, the people who have yet to visit Pier 39, describe it to us and tell us what makes it special.
Well, what makes the pier really special is that it is the most strategically located pier on the San Francisco waterfront. We are 45 acres, mainly over water, as you can see, 247,000 square feet of entertainment venue. We have an ideal mix of fun. We have restaurants, we have attractions, we have retail, and it's a place that people just gravitate towards. They come, they spend 3.5 hours on average. They eat, they drink, they're merry, and they soak in the sights. From the pier, you can see the Golden Gate Bridge, you can see Alcatraz, you can see the Bay Bridge, you can see Fisherman's Wharf, you can see the city skyline. And the most important thing, you can see the sea lions, who are our most famous attraction. Anyway, it's like a little fishing village. It's bustling with people. There's an energy about it that is just not, you can't match it in San Francisco. During COVID, I think our outdoor, the fact that it is a completely outdoor venue really made people feel comfortable, and they come, they love it. We have repeat visitors. We have fourth generation repeat visitors where I've had meetings with people where they show me pictures when they were there with their grandparents when they were kids. So it's a wonderful, fun place to come and visit. So if you haven't been, come on over.
And Pier 39, I want to say it opened in the 70s. Is that right?
Yeah, it opened in October of 1978. So we're going to come up on our 45th anniversary this October, and we're working on some fun birthday stuff. It will coincide with Fleet Week, which is always a huge week here, with a beautiful air show right over the pier, over the bay, and we're quite proud of the, just of what we have to offer to the public, to the world, really.
So it's definitely a tourist destination.
Mm-hmm.
What is the mix of local shoppers and visitors versus tourists? What do you think that percentage is?
So our mix traditionally, and it's always the pre-COVID and post-COVID, but whatever, our mix has always been about a third local, a third domestic, and then a third international. That international component obviously spends much more money than the local and even the domestic. So this year, summer, we don't have summer numbers yet, but we're total passenger arrivals in San Francisco are only down about 17% to 2019, and 2019 has been our benchmark year, and that's through April. But international arrivals through April were still lagging, and they were down about 33% to 2019. Most of that, though, is made up of the Chinese visitor, which that's really our biggest component that's not coming back yet.
I see. I'd asked you about this and you sent me some stats. Let me pull these up. So tell me, are these the numbers you were referring to?
Yeah. So that's just, those are the facts right now through April. Total visitors projected for 2023 is about 23.9, 24 million. In 2019, we welcomed 26 million visitors to San Francisco. This is all San Francisco. International visitor out of that is included in that total. So you can see we're getting there. But the visitor spend, of course, for the international visitor is a significant portion. What we've been seeing right now in 2022 and into 23, Mexico, the UK, Canada, India, Germany, those are all our top 5 visitors in volume, and also in a different order, the top 5 visitors in spend.
Do you have is there a forecast you look at for maybe when the Chinese tourist returns?
We're looking, and again, it's the big crystal ball, but probably not until 2025.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I mentioned that in our opening video, that just in general, international tourism really isn't going to return in the U.S. until 2025 completely. Yep. So we just got to hold out.
We've got to hold on, but we hear the whole world on the pier. And this summer, even last summer, when San Francisco reopened in June, we were so thrilled to hear the foreign languages come through, the Europeans. And earlier this year, the Asian visitor did start coming back. And those are generally a lot of tour groups. And so we're seeing it in the tour group business coming back as well. So that's exciting.
Yeah. So Pier 39, it's been around for almost 45 years, and it's probably changed. How has it maintained its relevance over the years? What do you think is, the tenant mix? How has that evolved?
So the tenant mix, the pier started out, and it was actually designed as a place for the local San Franciscan to come and enjoy the views, eat at 22 restaurants with bay views, enjoy artisan shops, everything from, leather tool working to, you know, glass blowers. Um, and when the pier opened, the San Francisco locals were not impressed. They were kind of like, "Oh, this is so cheesy, and we don't really like this, and this is not who San Francisco is." The good news, though, the tourists discovered Pier 39 and absolutely loved it. And they loved it then for what they love it for now, which is the beautiful views, kind of the quirky shops, the seafood, the attractions. Back then, it was much more artisan, kind of very specialty. That doesn't necessarily pay the rent. So in 1981, the Moore and South purchased Pier 39 from the original developer and had a history of, taking properties and revitalizing them. And then for the next 10 years, really worked on fine tuning the tenant mix, making some moves. We had the, many of our old tenants will say that death defying high dive show at the back of the pier needs to come back. But in 1983, that show was taken away, and the carousel was moved from the front of the pier to the back of the pier. The arcade used to be in the front of the pier. It was moved more to the entertainment zone, family entertainment zone in the back. Hard Rock Cafe took over that. Bubba Gump came in 1996. In 1996, we also added a pad, which is Aquarium of the Bay. So over the years, it's just been this fine tuning of mixing, having the right mix. And back then it was more retail. Now the focus is more on food again. So it's kind of this dance that you do of, and then filling in with attractions. The high dive show now is called, it's not a high dive anymore, it's the plunge, and you can go up on the plunge, spin around, drop down, spin around. You have 360-degree views of the bay, of the city, and some people are terrified and some people love it. So we are always looking to add something fun and different, but keeping the original sense of a place where you can wander around and just discover and enjoy yourself while you're doing it.
So, Sina, what's next? What do you think you want to improve or change as far as the retail or the food options?
So what we're working on right now actively is we've got 2 key restaurant locations that we are working to fill. And the goal really is to merchandise to the new customer, have a little bit more variety in our food offerings. We opened a taqueria, taco cantina earlier this year, a more, modern approach to Mexican food. It's casual, it's fun. We're opening Fire and Ice next year, which is an interactive grill experience. Again, something different that we haven't really had that kind of an offering on the pier. So it's not really changing it. This year, I am. We just opened last week actually a Green Planet, which is a CBD wellness store. So so a different thing, but you've got to have what the customers want. And earlier this year, I opened Quack at the back of the pier with a woman who is obsessed with rubber duckies, and we now have a rubber ducky store on the pier.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Well, I do have a San Francisco trip coming up, Sina, so I think I
Good.
need to check out all
I
this
think
stuff.
you do. Yeah.
So, all right, it's time to move on to our next guest. Sina will be back at the end for our group Q&A, our group chat. So, Sina, get ready for any good questions at the end. And right now, we're going to welcome in Eric Ogata. Welcome. So, Eric is your senior asset manager with Kamehameha Schools, and you're joining us from Honolulu. So what's the time zone math? What time is it right now?
It's 6:16 a.m.
You're welcome, Eric. I got you up early this morning. Actually, I should be apologizing. So, for me, Kamehameha Schools is a name that I've known for years, but I'm sure some folks aren't familiar with you, the mission, the real estate. So give us kind of the down low on all of that.
Sure. So Kamehameha Schools, it's a private educational trust. It's endowed by the will of Princess Bernice Pauahi Bishop, who is the great-granddaughter of King Kamehameha I. He unified the Hawaiian Islands back in 1810. And Princess Pauahi Bishop's will, she passed away in 1884, and in her will, it was her greatest desire and wish to perpetually educate children of Hawaiian descent. And we carry on that mission to this day. And all of the money that we generate in commercial real estate goes to fund education. And I would say about only 1% of all of Kamehameha School's land holdings is on commercial real estate, only 1%. But that 1% generates about 1/3 of all the funding that we fund for education. So last fiscal year was about 490 million. And of that, about 150 million came from our commercial real estate division, and the other 2/3 from our financial assets division.
Tell me a little bit about the retail portfolio that you have there.
So the retail portfolio, I have my own portfolio, which is Kahala, Hawaii, and Haleiwa, but there's 6 of us that oversee all of the commercial assets in Hawaii. And we probably have over 800 tenants total. It's of our commercial real estate, it's the biggest component. We have office, we have industrial, we also have hospitality, we have hotels in our portfolio, et cetera. But retail is definitely where our strength is.
So obviously the tourist dollar is important in your beautiful city and state. What is that? I mean, I remember stories of everybody running to Hawaii during the pandemic, right? Has there been sort of a tourist roller coaster going on over the years?
So 2019 was our biggest visitor count ever at 10.4 million. And everyone focuses on that number. Like that's like the number to beat, right? And obviously in 2020, everything went haywire. So we've been trying to get back to that number ever since. But what I tell people is in 2022, we're about 89% of that high point. But the visitor expenditure was actually 9% higher than 2019. And that 89% of the all-time high isn't due to the domestic visitor. That was all due to the international visitor. And probably the highest percentage is the Japanese visitor. So domestic wise, the visitor count was actually up in 2022. It's trending higher, probably trending like maybe 10 million at the end of this year. So super close to that all-time high, maybe 96% of the all-time high. But I tell people, don't just focus on that number. Focus on the quality of and the expenditures of the people that are coming. That only doesn't apply to retail. I have a hotel in my portfolio. Hotel occupancy hasn't hit that all-time high either in Hawaii. It's getting there, but it hasn't hit it yet. But their revenue per room, their revenue's up over 2019. I mean, if you compare apples to apples. So I have a friend that's in the hotel industry. They acquire hotels here, mainland Asia. Just at the tail end of COVID, they have a hotel on Maui, and their occupancies was down, very down, but their numbers were higher actually than in 2019. So if you dig a little bit deeper, it's going well. In my mind, the Japanese visitor was when they decided to come back, they were down 87% in 2022 compared to 2019. Huge drop, and it hasn't recovered at all. But in my mind, when they do come back, that's just going to be gravy, because as it exists today, our domestic visitor is by far like coming back in droves.
Do you have a sense of why the Japanese visitors haven't returned in full force yet?
I think it's a combination of things. I've heard that during the pandemic and the past a year or two that Japan has been offering their locals a lot of deals, so a lot of staycations for them, and so that was very attractive for the local person to stay in Japan as opposed to traveling outside. I don't know. I think they were kind of late to the game as far as jumping on the bandwagon as far as shots and whatnot. I don't really.
Right.
But,
yeah. Yeah, it was kind of a slow emergence from the lockdowns of the pandemic. So one of the properties that is in your portfolio is Haleiwa Store Lots. Tell us, I haven't been, but I love the photos you shared with me. Tell us a little bit about this property.
So Haleiwa Store Lots, it was developed back in 2015. It opened. It's on the North Shore in Haleiwa, which is, if anyone knows the Beach Boys song referencing Waimea Bay, it's probably about a 10-minute drive south of Waimea Bay. It's only 27,000 square feet. It does about maybe about $1,000 a foot in average sales. Before it was built, what we do is go out into the community and get their input. The Haleiwa North Shore, it's not like Waikiki, and we didn't want it to turn into Waikiki. And and the locals in North Shore are very vocal that they did not want a Waikiki in North Shore. So that being said, I mean, you won't see a national tenant here. They're all like local tenants. I would say the visitor percentage is 70%, 70% visitor compared to 30% local, and it's just a great place. I don't know if you can say a 27,000 square foot GLA center can have an anchor, but we do, and it's Matsumoto Shave Ice. It's been there for almost 75 years. My parents used to go there. It's the original tenant. And prior to our development, we incorporated Matsumoto's into the development. Prior to the development, there was nothing but brush and vegetation in where the parking lot is now. If you see that on the left there in that picture, but that whole parking lot was just vegetation and brush. And then we made the other individual buildings kind of blend in with the original buildings to try and make it look old, even though they're not old. And so it's definitely been a success in our portfolio.
So you're saying the main traffic driver is the shaved ice?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely. You'll see a line out the door at Matsumoto's, and it's iconic. Anyone that lives in Hawaii knows Matsumoto's. So.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, I need to plan a trip. I need to check this out. Yeah. So Eric, I have a million more questions, but we're out of time. For folks that have questions for Eric, put them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. But right now it's time to join in with Patrick Smith. Patrick is our vice chairman of JLL Retail based out of, you're joining us live from Midtown Manhattan today. And we're here to talk about, well, we can talk about New York in general. Maybe we'll kick it off with that. But you're also, your team is now leasing the iconic Seaport project. So I want to get into that in a minute. But let's start at the New York level. What's it like? Hot New York summer? Are there as many tourists as there were in 2019 out there in the streets?
Well, greetings, James, from New York. As much as I'm a lover of all things New York, after listening to the two panelists previous, I'm going to San Francisco and Hawaii. I mean, it's just such a compelling, and I'm a shaved ice guy too. So I would say yes, you can build a project around shaved ice. But no, New York has been really legitimately on fire and almost disproportionate to what the data shows us. You know, there's still a real challenge, I think, on a 5-day return to the office work week. So New York City is, I think, the largest office market, at least in this part of the world, about 460 million square feet. It has really changed dramatically in that it is a 3, maybe 4-day work week. And so that has impacted on, office occupancy, all the kind of things that drive New York. What it has not had an impact, and it really is quite astounding, is just the streetscape of New York. The streetscape is vibrant. So restaurant volumes, room rate occupancy, hospitality just burgeoning. Whether it be the return of the tourist or domestic, foreign, it's really almost it counteracts what some of the data tells us, and really has been extraordinary. And the success we had, from COVID, we had a couple of our core markets that we determined to be on normal absorption, about 8 years worth of supply. We are at historic lows in a lot of those markets now. So here it's really astounding. And you guess what? You'd expect a New York guy to say that, but it's real.
That's great. That's great. And what's your sense of the international tourists coming back? Because I know there's plenty of domestic tourists in New York.
Well, it's interesting talking to our colleagues in San Francisco. Yeah, we saw it. We really have seen it in really the last year. Amazingly, the domestic tourist returned almost immediately. And then we saw a lot of European tourists. And I think, tourism from Asia, I think, has returned in the last year. What does that mean for New York? Generally speaking, they say the bag average from a tourist from that part of the world is higher. In other words, they're buying more per capita. But it's funny, some of the data points that we see, one of which is like Times Square, which at the highest levels were somewhere between, depending on who's counting, somewhere between 65 and 70 million people, tourists per year. The Times Square bid is saying that we are nearly back to those levels, which are just extraordinary. Now, understand, combine that with that we are not really back to a 5-day work week. Some guys will say maybe 4, solid 3. It's really driven by the disproportionate return of that customer.
I see. That makes sense. So you're in Midtown. Let's head downtown and talk about the Seaport. So it was originally a fish market. Then it kind of became, if folks are familiar with Faneuil Hall in Boston, it was the attempt to recreate something like that out of a fish market in the 80s.
By the original Rouse company, same developer.
Yeah, which is, I'm ashamed to say, Patrick, that's the last time I was there. I have not been in modern days.
Well, you'll be very surprised when you return. So
I'm going to roll some video. Tell me about this. So Howard Hughes owns it now. Tell us a little bit more about this project.
JLL Retail is partnering with Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes likes to use the term that they are the curator of this, not the the operator. They're trying to take all the amazing things that is the Seaport. But we're a recent partner with Howard Hughes, joining them on this endeavor. And as we're learning about this, the thing that intrigued us the most, this is 10 acres in the middle of the financial district in Manhattan. The history here was this started with a pier. The original pier down here was in 1625. And then you had Fulton Street Fish Market, Pier 17, all this kind of things happen around it. Rouse built their version of this project back in the 80s. When Howard Hughes took it over, there was a plan to do this that was really changed and expedited with Hurricane Sandy. That was back, I think, in 2012. So they've reimagined much of what was going to go on here, and the driver for them was going to start with what you're looking at here up on the screen is Pier 17, was the complete redevelopment of Pier 17 with a really unbelievable performing arts venue, some office space. You're seeing the ESPN broadcast from this building. 4 iconic restaurants in the base of it, and this is John George's. One of his flagship restaurants, Andrew Carmelini, with a concept called Carne Mari, Mama Fuko with David Chang, and Helene Henderson's Malibu Farms. But this amazing place to go. New York, unlike many cities, you don't really have a lot of access to open space. You don't have access to the water, very limited access to the water. So they built this entertainment and food destination first, and that combine it with this. It's the largest, this 10 acres that is the Seaport is the largest confluence of historic buildings in one, protected historic buildings in one spot in New York. And you combine that with the charm of the cobblestones and just the vibe of this place when you get there. It's very different from the most of the downtown Manhattan and the financial district. The second component of Howard Hughes' plan was the Tin Building. So if anybody has not seen the Tin Building, Google it, make it part of your trip to New York. It's amazing. It's essentially a curated, I hate to say food hall, curated food venue, 100% curated by Jean-Georges, that has sit-down restaurants, has markets, has places to hang out, has bars, restaurants, everything. So this was in a building that was originally the Fulton Street Fish Market. And kind of the third component of this is what we're doing, which is that we are now going to continue the path that Howard Hughes has started to curate the streetscape that links to both of these two drivers. It's just a fantastic, I was down there last night, fantastic place to hang out, completely different than where you go, other places that you'll go in New York. And as a retail guy at my soul, what I search for are different, interesting venues, new things, something I can't get, elsewhere, the homogenous nature that is somewhat of retail. Boy, this is not homogenous down here, James.
So what does that mean for you? What kind of retail are you out there trying to attract? What do you envision?
Well, I think we're acknowledging at our core that we have this historic attachment that we have to keep with, because these buildings are historic in nature, but we have all this outdoor space and we have this built-in kind of food entertainment destination. So we're not going away from that. I think we're gonna leverage off of that, but it's having these unique, interesting destinations. So I'll give you an example. We're gonna, between long-term deals and short-term installations, we're the only place where I think right now in New York where you can come and you can go to Malibu Barbie Cafe. Now I'm not a Malibu Barbie
saw
guy,
that.
but I think there's a lot of little kids that are. But the idea that we can curate and do interesting things within these spaces, begin to try, have people have unique experiences down here, whether it be, utilizing that outdoor space and the connection to the water or not, but having real shopping alternatives. And maybe to my colleague in Hawaii, talking about interesting things that you can't find anywhere else. That's the driver. And to continue this quest that Howard Hughes has really done an amazing job starting. I think literally if this is a phase, this is kind of the third phase, and the built-in drivers are there and really exciting.
I love it. So we need to recruit an authentic Hawaiian shaved ice vendor, right?
I'm first in line.
We're doing deals right here live. Okay, Patrick, we're going to bring you back for the group chat. But right now, we're going to say goodbye to Patrick, and we're bringing in Emily Albright Miller. Emily, Hawaii, San Francisco, New York. Where are you joining us from?
Columbus, Ohio.
Yes, Midwest represent. We actually, Indianapolis here, so we actually are outnumbering all these fancy people today. So, Emily, your work is in retail design. So I thought it would be fun for you to talk us through, well, I know you've been doing work into what you call experience formats. So we'll talk about that, but I'm specifically interested in designing experiential retail for the destinational tourist. How do you think about that differently? So I'm going to pull up an image that you shared with me and tell me a little bit about this. How do you talk about experience formats?
Yeah, so we've been working with clients for many, many years to innovate on their experiences. And lately, we've been talking a lot more about a portfolio of experiences. So the idea that a brand can interact with consumers or come to life in a variety of different ways. It's not just kind of your core format that you roll out. It's really thinking about a dimension of your brand that you might want to bring to life or exploit in a different way. But what we found is when we started thinking about portfolios, all the conversations kept drifting back to real estate portfolios. And we kept thinking about these traditional definitions of real estate portfolio, largely because we didn't have a framework for thinking about our experience portfolio. So we invented one, and that's what you see here. We've come up with 9 formats that represent all different types of ways a brand could engage the customer, the different universe of experiences. And it's not to say that every brand needs to have all 9, but this is just a framework for evaluating what's right for your brand and maybe testing and learning how your brand might come to life in different ways. And I think it's interesting when we're talking about these properties, there might be a version of your brand that really makes sense in some of these properties that's different than the way your brand would come to life, in other markets or other locations.
Well, that's an interesting point. So let's say that we won't talk about any specifics, that our guests are from today, but let's just have a hypothetical, international tourist destinational retail food and beverage project. What on this wheel would appeal? What experience format would work best for that kind of project?
Yeah, well, there's no right answer.
Oh,
right?
no.
It depends on the brand. It depends on the project. It depends largely on the audience and how they want to engage with you. But you might tend to think, a more, immersive, like a flagship experience, which is our most immersive experience. Well, maybe that makes the most sense. But perhaps your customer just wants to get in and out as quickly as possible, get back to the surf, right? When they're engaging with your brand in that location. And so a self-service experience might be best. That's, you order from your app, you don't have to interact with an employee, you just grab your shaved ice and you're on your way back to the beach potentially. And so it really takes a deep understanding of your consumer and what they're looking for from your brand at that moment in that location.
That makes sense. So I know you did some work kind of analyzing some different brand strategies. So tell me a little bit, about what some examples of kind of success around this strategy might look like.
Yeah, I think I'll explain the framework using Starbucks, because Starbucks is one that we're all familiar with, and they do have a lot of representation across the framework. But just really quickly to step you through it, Starbucks your core neighborhood Starbucks, this is what most of us probably visited this morning. It's a very standard Starbucks experience. Temporary experiences from Starbucks are happening normally around new product launches. So they do pop-ups to celebrate seasonal product launches around the world in different markets at different times. Partnered experiences are usually one or more brands coming together in a co-branded environment. So while Starbucks partners all the time on product and merch innovation, there aren't a ton of examples that have affected and created a co-branded environment. Their stores with Amazon in New York are probably the best example, where they're using Amazon Go technology and it's fully co-branded in that environment. Starbucks does have a lab. We're seeing more and more labs pop up. Sometimes they're hard to find and identify, but Starbucks has a lab at their headquarters that they're using to test new products, new processes, new store designs. And so just constantly testing and learning and iterating in that space. Starbucks mobile pickup locations are a great example of self-service. Again, they're using technology and you never have to interact with a human if you don't want to. Completely a grab and go scenario. Flagship experiences, as I said, are your most immersive, your most comprehensive version of the brand. The roasteries, the Reserve roasteries that they're opening increasingly around the world, 3 stories. You can do full, espresso tastings. It's a very elevated service experience. And there's a lot of storytelling in that environment about sustainability and about the company values. Fulfillment experiences have popped up a lot more in the past few years. Those are experiences optimized for speed and ease. Starbucks does have drive-through only locations, and we would consider that a great example of fulfillment. High capacity drive-through are often in that fulfillment bucket. Then we have a curated experience. This is where you sort of take one aspect of your brand and you exploit it in a very specific way, like maybe one product assortment. This one we're actually not seeing as much from Starbucks, but imagine they did a Frappuccino only store, right?
Love
so they
it.
take the Frappuccino product and they
That's
make
cool.
an environment all about that. And then finally, extended. This is where you take a service or a different element of the brand and double click in. Starbucks community stores are a great example of this. They have announced they're opening 1,000 of them by 2030. They have one, for example, that's for the hearing impaired customer where they're using signing throughout that store. They have one that's for military families where they're employing vets and families of vets and heroing military heroes. So those are great examples of extended formats. And you can see here, you know, how we've tracked brands that are experiencing high growth, and we're seeing that most of them are experimenting across this portfolio.
That's so fascinating. You must, I mean, just keeping on top of all of these different designs that are coming out by all of these different brands has got to be a challenge for you in your day to day. Is there another outside of Starbucks? Is there another example of a new spin, a new format that you thought was especially innovative?
Yeah, I mean, Taco Bell's been doing this for years, right? When you think about
the cantina, right?
Their cantinas, their Taco Bell hotels, they're using they have automated restaurants that are that grab and go self-service environment. And so they've been a real leader in the QSR space and thinking about formats, and not all of them stick, which is important to note as well. So Walmart had a pickup location for several years, and they decided to close them all because they weren't working. And so, you know, again, not every format is right for every brand.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that also reminded me of in suburban Minneapolis, the robot Taco Bell with you drive up and it's like all fully automated, and there's like an elevator that brings you your food and stuff. So they're doing all kinds of interesting stuff. So Emily, it is time to get into our group chat. So I'm going to invite back Eric, Patrick, and Sina. Welcome, everyone. It's like a talking heads corral up here on our screen. So we have had some questions come in from the audience so far. I'm kind of searching through them right now as we talk. But if you've got other questions for our guests today, type them into the chat, and we're going to get to as many as we can. And we've got a question for Sina. What do you see needs to be done or is being done about crime in San Francisco? How have you had to navigate this challenge? And I guess, Sina, you can't get out of a talk about city retail without talking about crime. I'm sure, Patrick, it's a question you get all the time too. So what are your thoughts?
So on a San Francisco side, the biggest challenge is enforcement. Right now, the enforcement is not there. And SFPD is down 500 officers. Their California state laws changed in 2018, decriminalizing street vending, and that has been very misinterpreted. So San Francisco is a magnet because everybody knows they're not going to go to jail for anything, and that's a challenge. So we've combated it by, we have our own private security on Pier 39 24/7. We've brought in additional security so that the pier is essentially an island. We're an oasis, and we don't have the homeless issues where the unhoused are, sleeping in front of your storefront, all of that, because we are able to enforce our own property. But when it comes to SFPD coming, unless it's a life or death situation, they're probably not going to show. So enforcement in San Francisco is the biggest challenge. San Francisco needs to act and needs to wake up because it's not going to get better. Because if the criminals know they can come to San Francisco and they're not going to get in trouble, why wouldn't they come? So that's really, it's definitely an issue. So, and there's another question that kind of goes with it. Randy asked this question. So again, San Francisco government needs to downtown, which is a completely different neighborhood from where we are, the focus on business, and we're Midtown, you have so much more residential surrounding your streets. We don't have the residential. And even before COVID, on the weekends, the financial district was, completely dead. There was nothing going on. And now they're coming to work maybe 3 days a week. And San Francisco, again, is trying to make some changes and potentially to bring more residential in. But until the safety and the crime is dealt with, it's going to be very, very difficult to, at least engage those areas. It's an interesting study. Market Street now is not open to vehicular traffic, only public transportation and private transportation. So a main artery just got shut down. I think that's a big reason why there's so much loss of energy, because it's this energy that's gone. So anyway, lot of things that need to be worked on.
All right. Well, it's like any city. There's always things to improve.
However, I will say that it is still a beautiful city, and it's not as bad as the news makes it out to be. It is still beautiful, and when the guests are here, they love it, and they're amazed at how beautiful it is.
Yes, there's no reason not to take a trip to San Francisco.
That's
so here's a question from May asking about rents. Compare in your representative markets, how do rents compare to what they were in 2019? Patrick, let's talk about New York.
Yeah, we just released our second quarter retail report, and in most of the submarkets, we were down from COVID about 30 to 35%. In many of our submarkets, we are returning back to kind of pre-COVID levels. So we're not there yet. I actually, it's a good question. I don't like a generalized answer because I think, let's face it, retail is about a bunch of submarkets, and every submarket is different. It's almost like saying if there's 5 malls in a market, they're all the same. They're all completely different.
Yeah, that makes sense. Eric, what's your take on rents? And I guess we'll talk about, is Oahu the market that you kind of cover, or?
Yes,
Okay.
Oahu is the market I cover, and specifically three different towns on Oahu. But as far as rents, as far as my portfolio, it's as of today, it's the same as higher than in 2019. I mean, it's in general. Again, as Patrick was saying, everything is, you have to look at specific situations. But I mean, rents are based on sales, right? So it's a matter of that, and sales are going really well. They've been going well since 2022, and they continue to climb. So we're good right now. Yeah.
Excellent. Patrick is having technical difficulties, so we lost his signal for a moment, but let's see if we can get him back in there. Patrick, can you hear us?
right at the best part where I'm gone. That's
I know, right?
It's like a magic show that I play.
Okay, Eric, Jeff has a question for you. What challenges and opportunities do you see for KS real estate growth in Hawaii?
Well, just like everyone else, I mean, we have our competitors, and I think it's important to see not only what we're doing, what we think we're doing well, but what are our competitors doing, and what are they doing well? What can we learn from them that's going well? We're on an island. We're landlocked. Obviously, I think some nationals think that it's difficult to do business in Hawaii because of the naturally our costs are higher here. Our construction costs are higher here, but there are a lot of #1 locations in national chains here in Hawaii. Like when Cheesecake Factory, their #1 location was like Chicago, 18 million a year in, year out. First year here, I think they knocked out 20 million. Home Depots, right? Costco, like #1 or like locations and top locations in the country. So the sales that a lot of these nationals do here justify the additional cost and construction costs and expenditures and shipping, et cetera. That being said, you probably can't come to Hawaii and open one location. I mean, you have to have a thought process on probably multiple locations to make it to pencil. But it's, you know, what Target, I think Hawaii was the last state that Target came into. And so they're a little late to the game. So, I mean, they don't have the best locations initially, right? But they, over the years, they've managed to, we're actually have one that just opened up at our Windward Mall in Kaneohe. So we're looking forward to that. But it's tough being out here from, I think we're the most isolated piece of land in the world. So that makes it a little difficult. But again, you know, the sales, in a lot of cases, the sales justify the expense to open up here and the costs.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Patrick, I'm going to warn you. I got a question for you, but it looks like a novella here. So let's see what this says. New York's retail sector faced significant challenges in the past few years, including high pre-COVID rents that increased operating costs, a population that migrated to suburban locales during the pandemic, and the emergence of hybrid work, which reduced in-office attendance. What was or what is the plan for dealing with such situations? So I guess that's getting people back into the office from the suburbs. So any thoughts?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this when we started. There was a mass exodus of residents during COVID, and for the most part, those residents have returned. Again, we talked about, we are nearly at pre-COVID levels with tourism from all over the world. What hasn't returned is that 5-day work week, and whether that returns or not, whether we are always going to be this 4-day work week. So we've had challenges with that. I would say that the retail districts in Manhattan, the residential and tourist oriented districts have done better than the 5-day work week. So Midtown Financial District, those districts, the return of those districts have lagged behind from districts that have different drivers. But for the most part, we are back. I mean, we're, a lot of people, New Yorkers would say tip of the spear, kind of first in with the challenges, kind of first out. I've seen that on a couple of different circumstances to be true. And I think that is, we are, with most of the cold weather urban cities, New York is doing as good or better than all of them. And it gives really makes us feel good with Chicago and others that are right behind. They're seeing a lot of the same things happening in those markets. So I think it's a great question, but we're not seeing it here. It's what's going on in the streetscape is far better than what's been reported and what the data would tell you.
I love it. All right. Well, we're running out of time. I have one quick question. So guys, I'm Patrick. I know I'll be to New York again before too long. In fact, I have a couple of trips on the calendar. I'm going to go to the Seaport. What is my must visit spot? My must visit spot when I'm going to the Seaport?
Well, the easy answer to that is the Tin Building. I mean, Tin Building is spectacular, but if you enjoy chef-driven cuisine between John George, Andrew Carmelini, David Chang, Helene Henderson, that's the one place to do, and it's just a great place to hang around. Part of our job is to give you other things to do, and hopefully, if we do this again a year from now, we had a lot more interesting things to talk about.
I love it. So, Eric, when I get to Haleiwa store lots, I guess the shaved ice, right? That's where I've got to go.
Got to go to Matsumoto's. Here in Hawaii, we don't have a D on the shave part. We just say shave.
Shave ice. Got it. Got it. And
just welcome you with love and aloha over here. just be cognizant of respectful of the Aina, the land, the oceans. Use reef-safe sunscreen. Don't take pictures with our beloved and protected monk seals and our sea turtles. Just be cool.
That's advice for everybody when they're traveling. Just be cool. Don't be the ugly American.
That's wisdom. That's wisdom right there.
So Sina, I know I'm going to make it out to Pier 39 this summer, actually. So what's the first thing I hit when I get there?
The first thing you hit, just come and see the sea lions because they're back, and take in the beautiful views, and then come and have a drink at the Eagle Cafe, which is a historic building on the pier, and then have some tacos and some margaritas at Taco Cantina, and take a bay cruise and go underneath the Golden Gate Bridge and take it all in.
I love it. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining me today. We're out of time, but this has been a fantastic conversation, and I've really learned a lot. If you're watching live, I want to let you know our newest research report. It's the new quarterly retail market report for the U.S. just dropped about an hour ago. So it is now live on jll.com. So go over to the research section and you can download our latest report. Also, I want to encourage you, if you enjoyed this, check out our podcast. It's an audio podcast you can subscribe to on Spotify or whatever podcast you like, whatever podcast app you like. It's called Where We Buy. And we have conversations just like this one every week, and you can listen to them while you're working out or you're during your commute. Head over to the web at wherewebuy.show or search in any podcast app that you use. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you're watching us on LinkedIn, the best way to find out about the latest one of these, and we're going to do another one in about 4 weeks, is to follow JLL Retail on LinkedIn. That's the way to find out where everything is coming. So what did we learn about retail today? I think that I learned there's a whole lot of exciting, vibrant tourist retail destinations out there that are welcoming back guests, and in the coming years are going to welcome back even more guests. And if you want to know more of everything that we know about retail, you can join us here again next month.